because
All right.
you never know when I'm going to say something heinous. Sometimes it happens.
Uh,
So
you accidentally
you
do a hate
wouldn't
crime.
I might you wouldn't think that a conversation about long distance running would lead to a hate crime, but it might. So yeah.
And what a
All right.
fantastic introduction for the podcast.
Oh
I'm
no.
here. Hello and welcome to Obsess, the podcast about the things that we love and we can't stop thinking about. And when we can't stop talking about it to people, they come to me. My name's Josh, and I get obsessed with too many things on a week to week basis. My name, fuck. Hello and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast about the things we love and can't stop talking about. And when we can't stop talking about them to people and they get annoyed with us, they come onto this podcast. And my name is Josh. And joining me today, he is a multidisciplinary green thumb and does co-hosts a podcast with a very, very handsome other co-host. It's Jono.
Thank you for having me. This is good fun. I'm happy to be
Yeah.
on your turf today.
Yeah, this is my turf. This is all me. I have final editing control. I can make you say stupid things. I can edit you into saying something silly.
To be honest, even when on our other podcast, if I have control of the edit, I still end up saying questionable and slightly the derogatory things, and we keep
Yeah.
them in the edit.
Keep on
So,
going. We keep pushing through. Uh
yeah.
what is your obsession?
So, well, Joshua,
Yeah.
it's sort of been a journey, this obsession, and until you sort of mentioned the podcast and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm thinking of obsessed, I'm like, I think I am actually obsessed with this. And I've spent the last couple of weeks going, holy hell, like I haven't realized that I've been obsessed with this, but I am. It's
Yeah.
just something that's sort of I've been doing, and then I've just sort of had that realization, well, this really is my life, and I haven't thought about that for some of the reasons that
It's
we'll get into.
it's an
But
obsession, you could
it is
say.
an obsession, and that is running, specifically long distance running or
Long
LDR. I feel
LDR.
like we're going to be saying it a lot. So it's not a
LDR.
term that people use, but I reckon LDR, let's get it trending. Hashtag
LDR.
LDR.
Hashtag LDR.
Yeah.
Um
Uh, can
it,
I start by interviewing you with some a quick running quiz? Because I
oh
think
yeah, sure.
this
This is
might
this
be a
is
good.
not what I expected it to be, but sure. Okay. Sure.
I just thought this might be an interesting way to sort of explain what LDR is
This is
versus
fantastic.
other kinds of running.
This is great.
There there are three main categories of running distances:
Okay.
short, middle, and long. Do you know what distances would fall into those
Short,
categories?
medium, long. I
Yeah.
assume a long is a full marathon. Is that the
So
40 something?
you've fallen right into
Ah,
my trap,
trap.
my
Damn, you're kidding.
most
Really?
casual runners probably don't even realize it, but they are long distance runners because the shortest
Ah.
distance in the LDR category is 5K. So
You know,
anything over a 5K is classified as a
this is
long run.
really funny. I should have known that because I literally read through the Wikipedia on long distance running.
Did you?
Yeah, before, and I was thinking about it and I thought maybe they've changed it. Maybe I read it and it was like in different categories within it. No, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
That's
So short
interesting.
distance is kind of like your track and field, you're like your 100,
All right.
200, 400. Middle distance is like 800, 1500. And then
Mm,
long distance is sort of anything you wouldn't want to be running on a running track because you'd lose your mind. So that's
yeah.
5K to
Going around in circles a
42K.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then anything over a marathon is classified as an ultra. So if you run an extra 5 meters on your marathon, you've
It's
run
an
an
ultra
ultra marathon.
marathon.
So there you
Oh,
go. Little life
that's
hack for everybody
it's
there.
actually
But yeah.
it I think your journey with long LDR, yeah.
LDR, yeah, thank you.
Your
Thank you.
distance with long distance running, your
Mm,
journey, I think has been well, it's been tracked on our other podcast a lot.
it has, yeah.
And
But
I
that's once I became a long distance runner.
That's true. I want to
Yeah.
take it back to sort of when you first, even before you even started like recently
Mm,
running, like when you were in
yeah.
school, you weren't really a long distance runner or even a runner, really, were you?
I wasn't even a sportsman at all.
No, you did hockey.
Like, yeah, you and I, we
Famously
played
met on the
hockey
hockey
together.
track.
Yeah, we did. That was fun, actually.
Yeah.
First hockey session, I think. So you and hockey have been in my life for the exact same amount of time,
Yeah.
and hockey definitely hasn't become like stayed as a
Yeah.
close
Screw
friend.
you,
So
hockey.
you've won there. But
Love
yeah, in
that.
high school, I was one of those guys who like hated PE, and definitely never would have ever just gone to the bathrooms to not do PE.
No, who would do that?
Would never do that. When Friday
Yeah.
was first thing in the morning and I had a tuba lesson halfway through, I just wouldn't show up. Where's Jono in the second half of PE? I don't know. Not here. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, never was a sportsman. Never saw myself as a sportsman. Did hockey,
yeah.
enjoyed sport. And that's something that's taken me a very long time to realize that I enjoyed sport, even though I wasn't good at it. But for
Mm.
at least the first decade of my sports journey, didn't think I liked sport, but hockey was enjoyable. Played fullback and goalkeeper as
Yeah.
very similar positions to you,
Pretty
and you
much.
would know you don't really move
Not
when
as a
you
goalie.
when,
Well,
when you
when you
play
watch
those
it at the
positions.
Olympics, a lot more people, a lot more people. They move a lot more at the Olympics.
Oh,
Hard
they
to
move.
do
We would
when
just park ourselves in the goals
and then
and
sort
just
of
stand
chat with
there.
the fullbacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, because you've always
The most
been,
running
yeah.
in
Go ahead.
hockey was like the lap that you do around the
Oh,
field to like start
at the
up, and
start. Shout
yeah,
out Tyson, our hockey coach.
yeah, yeah.
um,
That was good fun.
you've always been an outdoorsy person to me though, and I feel
Mm,
like
mm.
long distance running makes sense for you in that way of like as an adjacent to like hiking and stuff in a way
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you were always a hiker more so
I I always
than a
love
sportsman.
exactly just touching grass.
Touching grass,
That's
as the
something
kids say.
that I like, touch grass,
Yeah,
which sounds like a euphemism, and
I'm
I've
still
been
not sure if
scouring.
it isn't one.
Yeah, I know. I've been scouring Urban Dictionary to try and see if it's something that's appropriate for me to put on my LinkedIn, in a post, and something makes me think that it's not. But yeah, I think that's partly why I enjoy running now, is
Yeah,
because it's another activity that you can do outside,
yeah.
and I live, for those of you who aren't fans of the hit podcast Comedian Haunts with Josh and Jono, you probably don't know. I live in Wollongong, which, to be
In the
honest, there's
state of
nothing to
Sydney.
do here.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing to do here. So
It's
you
other
have
than
to
being just
do,
really, really pretty. It's
yeah, well,
so pretty.
that's the only thing there is to do.
Yeah.
It's natural beauty. So you actually sort of have to do outdoorsy activities like hiking and running and stuff. And that's been really good. But yeah, going back to sort of how it all eventuated,
Yeah.
hockey was the sort of, I'd say, a good sport to do if you didn't want to run, but it still was very running adjacent.
Yeah.
But I always saw myself as, no, I don't want to be up on the wing or in the middle. Yeah, no run,
That's
no,
too
no,
much
no,
running. No, no,
too
no.
much running.
No, no,
In
no, no,
summer I
no.
played table tennis. You don't have to move
No,
for
there's like
that.
5 steps. You go one side to the other. If you're playing doubles, it's even less.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
People always say, "Oh no, there's so much running. You run back and forth." No,
No.
honestly, nah. Like you could probably sit in an office chair and like still get the job done.
Yeah.
And that would be fun. But then if we run it forward a bit more to university days, I
Mm.
started playing ultimate frisbee,
Oh.
and I remember spitballing to my sister, being like, "Oh, like when I join uni, I might join ultimate frisbee," and she's like, "Oh, well, you're gonna have to start running." And
Oh.
because frisbee, if you're not very familiar with it,
I'm not,
it's
and I
just
don't want to, but I'm interested
it's a
in
great
your
sport and
case.
you should
Yeah.
get involved. I'll take you one day.
Yeah.
I'll sabotage you one day and just throw a surprise frisbee game on you.
That'd
But
be a shame.
it is the size of a soccer pitch, and because the disc, which is what you call the frisbee, goes so far, it's essentially just a series of sprinting up and back on
Mm.
a soccer field,
Yeah.
and the points only go for a couple of minutes, and usually the majority of the team will sub off after a point, just because you just flat out
Running a
sprinting. You
lot.
almost have,
Yeah.
yeah, two teams. And that was probably the most running I'd ever done. And I'm like, holy fuck, my sister was right. I do have to start running. So I do like bits and bobs, like really short, like 1K, 2K. If I was feeling crazy, 3K like runs, like in the afternoons after uni and stuff. And I absolutely hated it with everything inside my soul because I wasn't doing it what I now know as correctly. I
Yeah.
went out there, and I think a lot of people when they first run, they run like quite quick. And I went out and I'd be like hoofing it.
Printing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you feel like you're gonna die because you're like, oh, I won't like jog. I'm running, but I won't sprint because
Yeah.
I'm running. So you think running is in between jogging and sprinting, which
Yeah.
it's not.
No.
So you ended up going way too quickly. And yeah, it
And
was an absolute shambles.
yeah, so we were roommates 2022.
Mm. Uh,
That but
I was trying to think about this the other day. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, I think so. That sounds
2022,
about
but
right.
before that
Yeah.
you had already sort of tried to get into running, right? Like
Yeah, that's
proper
right. So
real running.
in so frisbee was like when I had kind of run, and people in my frisbee team, everyone kind of did. So it's just assumed that, oh, if you're in frisbee, you run. And one of the guys that I did frisbee with, he said to me one day, I just got a text. He's like, "Hey, do you want to run a marathon?" And I thought it was more of a like, is this
As a
something
joke.
that's on your no, I thought it's like, is this
Oh,
something on your bucket list? Like,
yeah.
is running a marathon something that interests you? And like
Mm,
maybe in 20 years we work up to running one, right? Because at
yeah.
this point I thought it was completely out of the question for anybody to run a marathon. I thought
Yeah.
only superhumans run marathons, which maybe is true, but I just thought it was completely unachievable. So I'm like, look, it actually does interest me. He's like, well, RMIT, which is the uni we went to, they're offering like free entry to any of the events in the Melbourne
Oh,
Marathon.
wow.
So I'm like, oh, you actually want to run this? No, 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 not marathon for me. What's the shortest event we can do? And it was a 5K.
Yeah.
And that and anyone who's ever run a 5K will tell you, even though that's the shortest of the long distance running categories, that is an unbelievable achievement to run a
Mm.
5K. 5K is far. Like, think if you were
Five
going
kilometers
somewhere
is a
that's
long
5Ks
way.
away,
Yeah.
it's a long way, right?
It's a long
Like,
way. It really is.
even in the
Yeah.
car, it would still probably take you a while, right?
A little bit, yeah, for sure, for sure.
If there was a Woolworths 5K away or an IGA 1K away, you're driving to the
You're
IGA,
driving to the
right?
IGA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So it's
sure.
really far. And I reckon I trained for that for about probably 4 months.
Right.
And it was absolutely awful using Couch to 5K, which I
Couch to
highly
5K.
recommend.
Yep.
Good
Yep.
app. You
I've
doing
heard.
run, walk. Yeah. There
Yep.
are ways to exploit Couch to 5K because rather than distance, it uses time. So it's
Oh.
like run for 3 minutes and then walk for one. So you can like run really, really slowly and you don't have to go as far. So
Mm.
you sort of get as much out of it as you put into it,
Yeah.
which
But
was
hey, if you're
part
starting,
of the problem. Yeah.
yeah,
It
for
was
sure.
so I think I got up to about 4Ks, which just felt like an absurdly long distance.
Yeah.
And then I reckon it took me about 6 attempts to actually be able to run the next distance, which was 4.5 kilometers. I just kept stopping and walking. I'm like, this is absolutely impossible.
I think
But
even from
yeah,
someone who's never run more than a kilometer,
mm,
kilometer plus is like an achievement. I think like
a kilometer is an
a
achievement.
kilometer is
Like,
is
honestly,
even a kilometer is it's a long
it's
distance.
it's
It's not a
so
full, it's not a
far.
long distance run, but it
No.
is like it's double it's a lot of meters. And
It's
that's
actually a
how I think
useful
of it.
distance to run.
Yeah.
You could run home from the train station. You could run to the milk bar.
Yeah,
You
just
could
run.
quarter the time it takes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very convenient.
Um, but yeah, I just because I knew I had this run coming up, I'm like, "Fuck, I'm just gonna have to keep going out. I wouldn't have stuck with it if there wasn't the actual
So
5K locked in.
yeah, so that was
But
almost
just
a bit like on accident even.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, oh God, I have to do this. So the consistency just came from needing to actually be able to make the distance.
Yeah,
And
out of
we
fear of
got to yeah, exactly. Out of fear of not
fear
being able to do it.
of
Uh,
embarrassment, which will be
we
a continuing thing we get back to
that
throughout
is
the
a
whole.
big thing. We
Sorry,
get to the
go
race
ahead.
on the day of the
Yeah,
race, and um, I will often do a good complex Google Maps of how to get somewhere. And you and I have been in these boats, And other
Yeah.
people, you included, will go, "Oh, why are we taking this route? Wouldn't it be easy to go on this route?" And the person I was doing the
Yeah.
race with goes, "No, let's not take that train line. We'll get this train line instead. Trust me." Blah, blah, blah." Anyway, we get that train line. Didn't take us anywhere where we needed to go. Ended up missing the start by
You're
25 minutes,
kidding.
which meant we had to like sprint to the start line to actually
Oh
make
my
the
God.
cutoff. So we're pretty knackered.
Yeah.
And that meant we're also behind the walking event. So
Oh,
as
yeah.
will become a bit of a theme again, these running events actually are usually a bit of a shambles because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that's outside of your control. But we ran the race, and that was sort of the first time I'm like, okay, I've run a 5K. I'm a runner. Like
Yeah.
I'd proved to myself that I could do it, which I don't think is a healthy way of looking at running. But I did the 5K, I did the event. I'm like, okay. And that's sort of when I solidified myself as that is something that I can
You
do.
want to
That
do.
was the start. Yeah.
That's awesome. When you yeah, you do the 5K and
Mm.
then you get back in touch with your good friend Josh,
Yep.
who you start talking to, lockdown happens. That
Yes.
that's
That
do
did
you
happen. That
lockdown happens.
happened.
Do you do you
Oh
remember
no.
lockdown,
That
guys?
happened.
What a fun time. Do
Barely,
you
honestly.
do you, did you were you able to run throughout, like, obviously not a lot, but did you get, was it like a, oh shit, now how am I gonna like keep up the energy?
Yeah, I think once I ran the 5K, I'm like, that's it. I did it. You know, it wasn't, I didn't really enjoy it. You'll notice
Yeah.
not a single part of that story that I mentioned
No.
that, oh, I had so much fun doing it. I didn't enjoy it. It was a
No.
chore. I had a 5K to run and I had to make sure that I could do it. So then lockdown rolls around about a year or so after that. And I remember just out of pure desperation to feel anything,
Oh
I
my
would
God.
occasionally go for a run at like 5 p.m. because that was like the
Yeah.
the final year of my bachelor's degree as well.
Yeah.
So I was just really in my head with a lot of things. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay, like I'll
Yeah.
go for a run. And I started kind of enjoying it, but I kind of took a bit of a bad approach to it again, which once
Yeah.
again is also a theme. And tried to, because I'm like, oh, last year I ran a 5K, didn't run since. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess if you, once you've run a distance, you can't run the same distance again. You have to go higher to
Yeah.
prove to yourself that you can go higher. So I started like training for a 10K, which was an absolute shambles. I did
Dumb.
this Nike Run Club
Jeez.
thing that was making you do
Uh,
sprints and shuttle runs and stuff like this isn't fun. And I pretty much I think I probably only did less than 10 runs
oh
in
God.
2020, and then that
Yeah.
was that was kind of it until we yeah moved in when was it? Like
20
yeah, the middle of 2021 or the start of 2021.
start of
And
2021. Yeah,
yeah,
wait. I
you
said
dragged me
2022. I
to a
meant
gym one
2021.
day.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
No,
well,
2022. It was 2022. You're right. So I
yeah,
had
because
like a
2021 we started the podcast about
yeah,
halfway through
yeah.
the year because we had spent
Mm,
the first half of the year like writing random songs while we were still in lockdown
mm,
together,
yeah,
and they're all in a document somewhere. And then
yeah.
we started the podcast, and that first
Mm.
season was interesting. And
12
then
episodes long
12
as well.
episodes, 12 episodes long.
And then yeah, all of 21, I didn't run.
Mm,
Just wasn't something I ever enjoyed. So why would I do it in
yeah,
what was already one of the worst years of my life?
that's true.
So,
And then by
yeah.
2022, I might be wrong, but I seem to remember pretty early in when we were roommates, you were like,
Mm.
I'm gonna get back into running.
Yeah. You dragged me to the gym. Well, not
I
really.
did.
There was a gym on the
There's a
corner of
gym
our
right
road.
next to us, and it had a
And
really good deal, and I
yeah, it
didn't use
was
it
it was a
enough at the
dollar
time.
a day.
A
It was a
dollar a day.
dollar a day. That is unbelievable. $7 a week.
Yeah,
So I went into this big scary gym, and look, by the end of that year, I was, comfortable and all the equipment and stuff. But at the start, I'm like, treadmill. I know how to do that.
run.
Um, and that's kind of what started it. I
Yeah,
went back into trying to run 5K again. And once you've run a distance, you know mentally that you can do it. So it's a lot
yeah,
easier to actually do it because you're like, even if my fitness is lower, I've done it before. I know that it is actually
it's
possible for me to do
possible.
it. Yeah. So I
And
got it up a bit quicker,
yeah,
back into the 5Ks. Yeah.
that year you also started park run.
I did. Park Run came about because I actually signed up for a half marathon.
I forgot about
Um,
that.
but
That's true.
bef before that was the 10K
10K.
because
Right.
I
Yeah.
the when I actually tried to do it properly. No, you know what? I didn't try and do it properly. It was 11 days notice I signed up
Yeah.
to the
I
10K.
again, the theme runs through.
Unbelievable. Why did I do that?
Look,
Um
all I'm gonna say is
oh,
it's fantastic. I really appreciate it's great. It's good stuff.
it was the 10K was
Entertainment, that is.
actually it
Yep.
was fun. Like I think I ran every day for like 9 days straight in a row because I had to double my kilometer. I was gonna say mileage, but then I'm like, how do I spin
Yeah.
this into kilometerage? So I had to
Kilometerage.
I had to double my kilometerage
Yeah.
in yeah, less than 2 weeks.
Because I remember
The
they had like sent out
Yeah.
like a plan and you had shown me like the plan of what it was like, and
This
you were
was
like,
Nike Run Club plan, like
yeah,
what it's Nike Run Club is better than Cash to 5K, but it's a little bit harder to get into. But yeah, I was following the plan. I think I just ended up just trying to because it's like a 3 month plan that I was trying to do in 11
oh
days.
yeah, that's what it was.
Um, but yeah, I don't know how, but it worked and I did it. And I actually got what I considered then a good time. Now I don't think the concept of a good time is a healthy way to approach
But
running.
also
Yeah.
you didn't come last.
I didn't come
I think you
last.
came second last, which was the set would
Um,
be the second time that
maybe,
happened.
maybe fourth last.
I think I maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm wrong. Once you start like running and you're like, oh,
Mm,
this is something you start doing more
mm,
often.
mm.
What was it like running alongside what I imagine a lot of people on like tracks and stuff would be like really more experienced than you? What's like
Yeah,
that sort of like feeling once you're gender? Do you get like a bit of imposter syndrome or
running imposter syndrome is a huge thing, and I still have it.
mm,
But I wouldn't say necessarily I've ever. There are definitely some shades of like when you're running along, and especially this year, I trained for a half marathon and ran a half marathon and actually enjoyed
uh
it. And we can
sorry. I mean,
we can
yes.
we can touch on that
Yeah, we can.
a bit later. But
Yeah.
this year, I sort of taught myself how to actually enjoy running, and there are times where I would be like shuffling along at a snail's pace and people would run past and absolutely flying, no shirts on, glistening in sweat, beautiful, beautiful, majestic human beings,
Like they're on
bodies
a
at
ad
temples.
for home and away running along the
Yeah,
beach.
really showing what the human body is built for.
Yeah.
And lanky McGee over here is just
Like
stumbling around, and you do feel like, oh, I am inadequate to these people.
yeah.
But I think most of the imposter syndrome goes from you talk to someone, they go, "Oh, are you interested into any sports or like what are you doing on the weekend?" kind of thing, and you bring up running because that is all you have time to do because running
Yeah.
consumes your whole life when you get into hashtag LDR.
Yeah.
And the first question everybody will ask you when you say you do running, they're like, "Oh, do you do like track and field or do you do long distance?" And you go, "Oh, I do long distance." And you go, "Oh, so how many marathons have you done?" And
Yeah.
it is absurd that that is the first question that people ask you. But I think part of it, you look at me and you go, "Oh, he's got the build of a runner." So he's probably actually quote unquote good at it. He must run marathons. How many marathons have you run? I go, I've
Yeah.
not run a marathon. Oh, what's the highest distance that you've run up until this year? Oh, 10K. Okay, they're already not impressed with you.
Do you
Oh,
also
what time
think
did you get? An hour
yeah.
and 5 minutes. Also a very unimpressive time.
Do
So
you
you
also
start thinking that you're
yeah.
not actually a runner because you're not meeting random people's expectations of what a runner is.
Yeah. Do you also think that there's an element of like as running as a concept is such like a
Mm,
thing that everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I could run. I run all the time." Like anyone who's
absolutely.
just like any Joe from friggin', Ascot Vale, I don't know.
Mm. I bet Joe from Ascot Vale probably has run a marathon because everyone's doing it these days, which is a great thing.
Yeah,
But
I
I
guess
I, I know what you
yeah.
mean. It's people, especially like on YouTube or TikTok, if someone's like, "Oh, like I'm training for a marathon, I'm doing 4 months of training, like this is my regime, this is what I'm doing it 4 times a week," and people go like, "Oh, like I bet I could run a half marathon in like half the time or whatever. And to be honest, they probably could, but like
Yeah.
everyone's different, right? If you're just naturally that disposition and that genetic makeup that you can run with a lot more ease than other people, great. But for some people, it is a lot harder. But the thing I like the most about running now is that everybody runs the same race and
Yeah.
you're out there together. And if you are a slower runner, you have actually spent more time doing that sport than the faster
It's a
runners.
good point.
Because if I ran a marathon, it would take me about
Yeah.
probably 5.5 to 6 hours. And I've got a very close friend of mine who will run it in like sub 3 hours. I'm out there for double the
That's
time, bro.
crazy.
I'm putting in more
Jeez.
work. So,
Yeah.
in some ways, it is actually mentally a lot more difficult to be a slower runner. So I think, yeah, the toxic culture around running of like, oh, I could do that. Like, oh, you're so it's like, mate, they're like, it's actually really difficult, and they're really putting in the work. So, yeah,
When
it's really annoying when people
you've
do
brought
stuff
it
like
up a
that.
couple times just to build
Mm,
on that, like the toxic running culture, you yourself
mm,
have had to like sort of feel
navigate.
that by navigate that from
Yeah,
yourself. But I imagine
yeah.
also like in general, like when you're out there, is that one of those things? Like I remember I think we talked about this on the special of our other podcast.
Mm.
So shout out the community. No, we don't have to shout the
It's
community.
good podcast.
It's
Genuinely good show.
I have to say, your co-host,
Yeah.
very handsome.
Yeah,
And
he is an absolute
like
looker. He is.
he is.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like, do you find like the toxic running culture from a perspective of like yourself, we got 10 minutes, it's fine, ignore me.
Mm,
I'll try that again. Building on that, the toxic running culture in like running when you're like out there, you're navigating
mm,
this from like two realms. It's like the people out there, the
yep.
people talking to you that maybe
Mm,
don't run, and then your own sort of experiences by yourself with toxic running.
yep.
Can you sort of tell
Yep.
me a bit about how that sort of
It's a
goes?
really good way to bring it up. People who run are not the problem. There's a
Mm,
small amount of toxic running culture that I've experienced in actual running, and
maybe also on
it's
TikTok.
yeah, well, the actual out there on the
Yeah.
field doing the run, like when I did the half marathon, it was an absolute fucking schmozzle. It had been raining for weeks. The course was chocolate mousse. He couldn't actually run half of it. They probably should have called it off. It was a nightmare. But that caused a lot of small talk, and I was raw dogging it because I forgot my headphones, which was terrifying. But I
Oh,
was raw dogging it out there for nearly 3.5 hours, which was just absurd. And I was just chatting to people for probably 80% of it. And it was so nice. Everyone was like so encouraging. Everyone was just sharing war stories about running. It was great. And park run, as you touched on, it's a pretty, community kind of vibe.
mm,
So actual runners who are out there participating in these like group events are probably going to be the ones that are doing it for a sense of community as something to do. So the actual toxicity is actually like pretty low in those groups that I found. But it is as you touched on, it's that online community that it's the worst. And there's a trend at the moment that I was telling you about where every time you finish a run, if you cross the finish line, a run is in like an actual event, you get a finisher's medal.
yeah,
And it's great. I love them. I line them up on my shelf. They're my kills,
I
right?
saw them.
Each
Yeah.
medal has a story behind it, and I love it. But there's a trend of people taking the medal and throwing it in the bin on the way out. And that
Uh,
is one of the worst things. I
yeah.
hate that so much. A, if you don't want it, don't take it.
Yeah.
But B, the reason they're doing this is it's like, oh, it's so insignificant. It was just a 10K. I've run 15 of them before. Oh, it's just a half marathon. I've run an ultra before. I don't need to worry about this. And what that does is it shows to all the other people who in their mind and in their life, the 5K is one of the biggest, if not the biggest achievement they've ever done in their life, that, oh, this is insignificant and it's not important. Um, and yeah, behavior like that and how it gets publicized and stuff, I think is very off-putting for a lot of people who want to be runners, but think that they're not runners. But if you run, you run. and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah.
And and so maybe on the opposite of that, like you do have those like trends of people throwing finishing windows in the bin,
Mm,
which to me sounds
mm.
ridiculous. And it sounds
Isn't
like
that so
it feels
stupid? It makes
it
me so
reminds me of
angry.
like it feels like the Liver King of it's like the Liver King of that,
It
like
kind of
but
is.
in
Yeah.
that same way. And I guess you just have those people online who are like that in everything. Like you were
Mm,
talking before about imposter syndrome. I think about
mm,
that when I talk about, I mean, stuff like this where I'm doing a podcast interview, and like you
mm.
talk to people, and their first questions is always, "Oh, you're like, who have you had on the podcast?"
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
How
what's
many
your idea?
downloads do you get a
How many
week?
downloads
Yeah.
idea?" Like,
So we get five, but
yeah,
fucking who gives
but
a shit? It's fun.
go fuck
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. But we shouldn't have that reaction.
no, like this
We
is
should
just
be
something
like,
that's
yeah,
just a fun thing
we
I
get
like
five
doing.
listens.
I
Yeah,
I
exactly.
genuinely love interviewing and talking to people about these things. That's I wouldn't
Yeah.
do it if I didn't like it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I tell you a good you actually need to develop a strategy. I've developed a strategy for
mm,
dealing with when people because what people do, right? They're sneaky. They know if they go, oh, what's your average 5K time or whatever, that I'm gonna have an answer of avoiding that and not talking about it because I
yeah,
don't see it important. And something else I touch on later, I don't time most of my runs anymore.
yeah,
I do it for fun. Um,
fuck yeah.
but what they do is they'll go, oh, what's the average 5K time? What's the
Mhm.
average 10K time? So then when because they know nothing about running, so then when you say your time, they have something to anchor it against. So they go, oh, what's the average
Yeah,
5K time? You say a time, you say your time, it's higher, and they go, oh, you're not
yeah.
actually a runner. And what I say now, I saw this somewhere online and I love it. If someone goes, oh, I ran a 10K. Oh, cool. What's the average 10K time? Well, average people don't run 10K.
Oh,
I
that's
love that.
good. Oh, that's really good. But I
Yeah.
mean, on that sort of thing about the TikTok thing, what I've just
Mm,
remembered the thing I was gonna say.
yeah.
Like when you got the people that are like building like the toxic culture who you don't like, do you have
Mm,
like positive people online that you go, oh, I love modeling myself over that kind of person, or people in your life who are like, oh, this is the kind of thing I want to do.
yeah.
You talked about your roommate who runs. Like, what are like the
Yeah.
positive influences on you?
I'll start with TikTok. You've hit on two good realms. TikTok and I'm sure it exists on YouTube as well. But there's a trend that I think it's started to not be called this, but people calling themselves slow runners. And it's like slow run talk. And it
Low
was a
run
community
talk.
of people who are proud to be slow runners to
Yeah.
go out there and run a below quote unquote average 5K to run a half marathon that takes the whole fucking day to run. And it's really encouraging, and heaps of people will be like messaging and being like, whoa, like, I've never considered myself a runner, but I run those times, and you call yourself a runner, and I think it's great. It's like this real community of people who have maybe not fit into the typical sporting culture. They want to steer away from that toxicity that they've experienced and stuff, and haven't backed themselves as runners. But in their like mid to late 20s or early 20s have gone, I've seen these people that, aren't the big macho guys with their shirts off. They're just out there wearing Kmart shorts and a t-shirt they've had for 6 years and the shittiest
Yeah.
shoes you've ever seen in your life. And they're just going for a run and they're loving it. So I think it's made it a lot more accessible to people to actually see the other side of running. Because normally
Yeah.
you don't see that. You just see the people who you go, oh, they're runners. But people shuffling around their runners, and it's made that visible to people, and I love that. Um,
Can
but yeah,
we
they've
actually
started to
before you,
not call themselves slow runners anymore because there's no point mentioning what your speed
yeah.
is there? If you
No.
run, you're a runner.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to see more, check out our TikTok, check out all the things. There are lots of little clips. Do you like little clips? I don't know. I haven't decided on that myself, but maybe that's something you like, maybe that's something you're not. Let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram. The Instagram will be down in the description. This is a bad webcam, and I'm sorry about that. Thank you for listening to this episode. I really love it. John is always a great person to have to chat to. If you haven't checked out the podcast that we do together, it's called Comedianons. It'll be coming soon, back in 2025. So check out that. All of it will be in the down there.
And yeah, then the other side, that you brought up, so you got the positive community of running on TikTok. Then yeah, my housemate, who's been a really good influence, and
Mm,
I'd say I'm gonna guess that he's probably been one of the biggest reasons that I've enjoyed running this year.
that's
He
awesome.
is an elite runner. He's going for a sub 3 marathon, which is just shy of like qualifying time for the Olympics. Like
Jeez,
it's
that's
unbelievable. Like
crazy.
I'll get up at like 6 a.m. He's come back from a 2 hour run and he's
Jeez.
done 34 Ks or something. Like it's absolutely absurd. But he is one of these guys who, if I saw running on the street, I'd be like, oh, he's one of these, macho elite guys. But it's been a good lesson to me to go, just because someone is looking very serious into running, they are very quick, it doesn't mean that they're an asshole, which
Yeah,
is something that's so easy to do. That I think it's been good for
yeah.
me to learn that. He's been nothing but supportive. Like he'll come back from running a marathon on a Tuesday morning, and I've just run 3 kilometers, and it's the furthest I've run in 2 years or something. And
Mm,
he'd be like, "Man, that's fucking crazy! Like
yeah,
that's heaps far." Like it's not, but he'll be like, "Oh, that's so good! Like you're going to be tired tonight," kind of stuff, and just no belittling at all, and
yeah.
no jokes of like, "Oh, mate, you should see what I did this morning" or whatever. Like we'll never talk about his running unless I specifically ask. And it's been really nice to sort of he's sort of like my Yoda, my mentor.
That's really cool.
And
Yeah,
he'll help with stuff. So
I
he'll never
think
explicitly say, "Oh, you should do these workouts, you should do this stretching, you should eat this kind of stuff." But if I'm have a question about something, he'd be like, "Oh, I'd recommend you eat this X, Y, and Z, blah blah blah." And yeah, it's been really helpful.
that's awesome. We've touched on it a bit already, but like the the choosing to run for as a hobby versus running it
Mm,
as a sport, like not timing your runs.
yeah.
I imagine this is something you've specifically chosen to do recently. How
Yeah.
how how recent was that?
So up until the start of this year, I didn't like running. And every time that I've mentioned about that I run this year, the 5K, I hated it. I trained for it. I hated it. I ran for frisbee. It was
Mm,
shit. Um, I didn't like running, but something just kept drawing me back towards running.
yeah,
And I think it was the allure of a half marathon. Something about that just was so attractive to me.
yeah,
I'm like, I want to do this because it seems like if I did it, it's such a like a mental barrier that's lifted. It's like I can do hard things. I can do
yeah,
other things. So I
yeah,
think it was kind of a way of me going, and I've been doing that in a lot of areas of my life, taking a job that was in the state, moving in the state, moving in with random people in a different city. I like doing things that shift my mental perception of what I can do. And I think that was the allure of or the draw of the half marathon. So I'm like, okay, I would like to run one this year. And if I'm going to run one, I'm going to have to take a different approach than I
mm,
have in the past because it's so far. It's such a long way. I wouldn't drive 21 kilometers to do something on a weekend. So if I'm going to run that far, I have to enjoy it.
yeah,
And not only do I have to enjoy the 21 kilometers, I have to enjoy the 500 kilometers in the 4 months leading up to it.
yeah.
Um,
Do you know
and
how many,
yeah,
sorry, do you know how
no, no, no.
many runs you did leading up to your half marathon
So
overall?
from the start of the year,
When you decided you were going to do the run,
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
like,
from the
I need to
start of the
start prepping.
year to now, I have run around 600 kilometers.
Wow.
So how many runs that is, it's probably around probably 2.5 to 3 a week on average. So
Have,
yeah, it
and
ends up
and
not being that many, but it's
is that the
consistent.
most you've run this
Oh,
so far in
ever,
in a year?
ever. Most I've ever run ever.
Do you
Like
feel
I've,
like
mm,
do you feel the like accomplishment of that, or is that something
I've
where like it like you take it in your stride? Like you know me, I have trouble admitting to any time I feel like I've done anything that's worth accomplishment.
yeah.
Like,
I
you
don't
are
see
able
it
to
as an
take that.
accomplishment. No, I don't. I just go, oh, that's a cool thing that I've
Yeah.
done. And I think it's from like kind of the way that I've approached it of like it's not like, oh yeah, I've run 600 kilometers. Like I'm a runner. It's just something that I look back on and go, wow, that's cool. And I sort of I guess I use it as motivation of going like, oh, like oh, maybe I'll run 3 times next week while I'm on holiday. It's like, oh, I don't want to, but oh, I've been averaging, 80 kilometers a week or something. Maybe it is something that I can do, and you
Yeah.
sort of use it as knowledge that you can do it. Um, but yeah, I had decided that I need to find a way to enjoy running, to actually get through the absolute heinous long runs on Saturday mornings and stuff. And the main thing I decided is I need to go slow.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very slow. And what I'd always done before is I ran with a watch
Mm.
and I would go, I need to run this 5K. And the slowest I can go is 5 minutes and 45 seconds per kilometer. And your watch can give you a readout of what your current minutes per kilometer pace is on track for. And if it starts creeping up towards 6, it's like, oh shit, I've got to get it between 5:30 and 5:45. And you'll see runners looking at their watch constantly every like 30 seconds. It's such a bad way to run, in my opinion. It's so
Yeah.
unenjoyable. Imagine for like on an hour and a half training run on a Saturday morning, it's meant to be the best day of the week. You're just constantly adjusting your pace, looking at your watch and stuff like
Yeah.
that, pushing yourself uncomfortably fast. So I'm like, I need to go slow and I need to not look at my watch. And the easiest way to not look at your watch is to not wear a watch. So
Yeah.
I would run with my phone and it would give me readouts in my ears of how far I'd gone. And that was it. No pace, no time, nothing. Just 1 kilometer. Cool. Time to run the next one. And something that I found is you actually get really good at running at a consistent pace when you're not relying on a watch. You start what's called running to feel.
Mm.
And that's what I do now. You learn what your breathing feels like if you're going at a certain pace, what your heart feels like, what your legs feel like, how long your stride is, what your hips are doing. You start being able to learn these things happen at different speeds. So you start being able to hold a consistent pace without looking at the time, which means you can just settle into a pace and you
Mm.
go, we're going to do this for the next hour, the next 20 minutes, the next 90 minutes, whatever it is. And you can just chuff along and look at the sea and look at the birds and stuff. You don't have to be
That,
constantly looking at your watch.
yeah. I mean, that reminds me of like, I remember once I went in, and you probably did this too. Did you do the aerodynamics subject
I
in high
didn't.
school?
I
You
didn't.
didn't do it.
No.
Oh,
No.
I remember we went to the like the whatever, it was like the Qantas fucking flight sim or whatever. Not
Oh yeah.
Qantas, maybe Qantas. I don't
Yeah, yeah,
remember
no,
what
it's
flight.
Qantas. That's
Qantas
it's
flight
near
sim.
where I
And I remember
where
I
I grew
was in
up.
a
Yeah.
group with a couple of people, and I remember I was sitting behind someone. I won't say their name. But like they were trying to land the plane, and I had done it, and then someone else had done it, and they did it. But they kept looking at the readouts all the time, and the guy
Yeah.
next to him was like, "Gotta stop looking at the dial. I'm gonna turn it
Yeah.
off. You need to look at
Ah.
where you're going."
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Look where you're going and learn it. Get it in your brain. Don't go off the numbers.
Yeah, and on
Yeah.
top of that, like you said, you don't really see it as like accomplishment. I think it definitely is an accomplishment, obviously. But just to
Mm.
put it in your mind what 600 kilometers is like. I've got some
Okay.
comparisons here.
Yep. Yep.
It's about 1 1/3 times as long as the Grand Canyon. That's
That's a
crazy.
long way. It would
That's
be
a
it is
long
very
way.
hot there though, and
I
they don't have
Yeah,
paved running
that's
tracks,
true.
so
I Well, no, but you think about it. Talking about places where I went, and this is the
Mm.
second time that I've talked about the Grand Canyon in a podcast of the two that I've recorded so far.
Hey, it's a beautiful place I've heard from you because you went there and you talk about it.
I, you know what? You know why though? Like
Yeah.
you ever go to a place and you go, I just am floored by just the
Yep.
physicality,
They're the
like
best.
everything about it.
They're the best things.
That
Yeah.
hasn't happened in a long time. I think it happened when I went to Uluru, and then it
Yep.
happened when I went to the Grand Canyon. Just everything about it
Ah. Yeah.
was like, this is crazy. It's about, I'm trying to find another one. Um, These are all American ones. This is stupid. You know what? It's about 1/10 as long as the Great Wall of China, which is pretty crazy.
Isn't the
One
Great
tenth.
Wall of China something absolutely ridiculously long, like 20,000
6,002
kilometers or something?
6,259 kilometers, according to
Yeah, that's
whatever
a
random website I'm reading it off.
it's a very, very long way. Um,
But I
but
guess
yeah,
sort
like
of, yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, nah, I was just sort of fluffing until until you pointed me in a direction. But you know what? I will go ahead.
Yeah, please do.
There's there's the running slowly, the running with intuition, and I think once you stop looking at the time and worried about how far you're going, like I would finish a run, and the if I look at my Nike Run Club app, it will tell me how long it took, but I would just stop. I'd hold down the square button, it would stop the run, put the phone away, and it was good. Like I just would go out for a run the next week, and I'm not trying to beat my time or anything. I was
Did it
just
take did it take a long time to get to that? Like to just decide,
mm,
or was it like a switch of like, I'm
it
gonna
was it,
tell myself and force myself, be like, I'm gonna get
mm.
into this, but in order to get into this in the way I want to get into this, I'm gonna force myself to not look at the time.
Yeah, it was cold turkey.
Cold turkey.
You just take your watch away, turn off the settings, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's forcing, but it's going, this is how we're doing it
Yeah.
now. And I saw the benefits like really, really early on.
Yeah.
Because for the first time ever, I'm like, wow, this is fun because my heart rate isn't in the danger zone anymore. It's called VO2 max, and that's essentially when you're far past anaerobic, you're in aerobic, you essentially your every breath that air is being used. You're not using stored oxygen or anything. You're using breath as it's coming in, and it's your heart rate is at like 180 BPM, and it's not a good way to be. But instead, you're in what's called like zone 2 cardio, where
Zone
your
two.
heart is in a relaxed yet active state. You
Mm.
can you can have a conversation. You're still in anaerobic respiration, and it's much more relaxing and calming for the body. And it's actually that sort of, if you're running for mental health sake, that's what's recommended because it's a very calming state to put your
Yeah.
body in. And because of that, like I was getting the dopamine of running for the first time and what's called runner's high. So I was feeling really good when I was out there. So it was easy to go, oh, this is for me the right way to be doing it. So it
And I
wasn't an annoyance to be tackling it like that.
and I imagine doing that, you sort of start realizing that there's just an overall vibe that just is like just really
Yeah,
conducive
it's
to
chill as.
chill
Yeah.
as. What was
Just
what do you
just
do to
just
like
go
help
out
with that
on a
vibe? Yeah.
just go out on the afternoon. I think, okay, what do I do to help with the vibe is a good question, because when I was training for the half marathon, it was I in order to be consistent, you have to book it into your routine. At least for
Yeah.
me. We're busy
Calendaring and
guys.
all?
You got to calendar it, and it's like
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday I run. Monday is a 5K. Wednesday will be a what do they call it? Um, Kind of like a exertive run. So it'll be
Okay.
like you like intervals. That's what it's called. Intervals.
Intervals.
Like you do like a sprint for 3 minutes, and then you do a slow run, and like they just tell you all these crazy shit to do. And then Saturday is long run, and then Sunday, if you want, can be a recovery. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily a great vibe, but it was still enjoyable to do it. But now that the
Mm.
run is done, I'm not planning on locking anything in for at least the next probably 3 to 6 months. I'm just
Yeah.
going to run for the sake of running, and I'm wanting to do it more. Um, I can mix it up.
Yeah.
I went for an afternoon run at like 4 p.m. yesterday, which was totally wild. And I might go for a run after we record this. It'll be like just before lunch, and being able to just randomly go for a run and be
Yeah.
like, oh, it's sunny, go for a run. Oh, there's massive waves happening at Sandon Point, I can go for a run to Sandon Point and see the
I-
massive waves that are happening, you know?
It being sunny,
Yeah.
I can't relate to it. It's overcast as shit in Melbourne, and
Yeah,
it's
I'm not
so
looking for.
cold.
I'm coming down to Melbourne in a few days' time, and
I forgot about that.
kind of regretting that sort of timeline that I've chosen.
Ah,
But
it was
yeah,
so
it
yeah.
ties into what you were saying earlier on. Like, I've been an outdoorsy guy. I've liked hiking. How does it tie in? That's what I'm finding now. Like, I'm running. I'm just going out for a run. I'm raw dogging it these days as
Yeah.
well. The half marathon told me I don't need headphones, so I'll go out there, no watch, no phone, no headphones, no
I
nothing. I'm
hate
probably
that.
gonna
That
get
makes me
kidnapped.
uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable.
And it's just me and my demons out there, you know. And
Yeah,
we're starting to get along more, which is nothing
that's
but a
always
good thing.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
So me and my
sure.
demons will go for a run. We keep each other company. And yeah, I've just sort of been exploring. Like, I'll run along the track and then I'll see like a street that's got lots of trees in it and I'll go down that street, or I'll see a field with a really cool looking bird that I still can't identify. I think it's an ergot of some description, but they're not meant to be coastal, but they
For
seem to
some
be on
reason,
the
it's
coast,
there.
and I'm confused. But stuff like that, you
Yeah,
just sort of go where the wind takes you. And it's been really fun. And yeah, it really is a hobby, as you said. It's like,
yeah,
I don't see it as a sport, even though it absolutely is a sport, but it's something I do to fill my time. And I think the largest factor of why I really like it these days is it comes with other aspects of it. So it
yeah.
comes with nutrition, stretching, and recovery. So it's it's not like, oh, the 20 minutes I ran today is the run. It's the ice bath that I did in the morning so
Mm.
that my muscles actually have a chance to relax.
I
It's the cross training. It's the eating the right amount of certain proteins and
I'd love to.
carbohydrates and stuff.
That's
Yeah.
something that I'd love to just quickly ask you about.
Mm.
I mean, what does a prep time look like? I mean, I saw a bit of it when I came over there to see the when I we came
Yeah.
to support you for the half marathon.
Mm.
But what does like the prep time, and I guess also as someone who is interested in like the gear of it all gear no idea
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what was the yeah from now that you're in it so far, like what
Mm.
does your gear look like? What things do you have
That's a
with
great
you?
idea.
What prep do you do?
I'll give you a rundown of a week training for a half marathon. How
Please
about
do.
that? So
Yeah, that's fantastic.
let's say we're a month out
Yeah,
from the half marathon at this point. So
yeah.
we're right in the thick of it. We're in the trenches.
We're in the trenches.
Often called the pain cave,
Pain cave.
where everything is difficult and your body is going, fuck. So what I would do, let's just say Monday. Monday, I said, is a 5K, and
Yeah,
it's recommended that, anywhere between 2 and sort of 7K as your like introductory run for the week. Once you're running, if you're running 20, 30 kilometer weeks, that's sort of how you ease back in after your long run.
yeah,
So that would always be a fun one. You also need to still keep your fitness at a very high level, which means you can't just rely off running, because I found my body can't run more than 3 times a week, or I start getting knee pain and back pain and just wake up feeling like I'm Flat Stanley and he's been hit
yeah.
by a bus, right?
I
So,
remember that book.
yeah,
Sorry.
great book. Great
Uh,
book. Always scared of
Throwback.
paintings falling on my bed and squishing me, which
True.
actually did happen
Oh, I
last
forgot
year,
about
if you remember.
that. Yeah.
So
Damn.
one
Can't
of
believe
my
we didn't
worst
make
fears
that
came
joke
true.
last. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so cross training is really
Cross
important. So I've
training.
been
Yeah.
super into boxing. You and I started doing
Rumble.
what do they call it? Like, yeah, box fit or boxercise. Um
Boxercise. Yes.
Started doing boxercise. When I moved up here, I joined a pretty hardcore boxing gym. It's pretty intense. So I've been really enjoying doing that. So
Yeah.
that was Mondays. Tuesdays would be a rest day. So I'd often go for a bike ride, because a rest day is more of active recovery.
Yeah.
Still making sure you're exercising to some degree to keep that base level of fitness.
Yeah.
But cycling is very easy on the body. I wasn't.
Comparatively.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're pushing it, sure, it's gonna be tough. But I just go for a cruise, just keep the legs moving. I see it more as a way to
Yeah.
stop the body from seizing up.
Mm.
Wednesday would be interval training. So Nike Run Club would have plans that in your ears, Coach Bennett and some lady called
Can
Sally or Susan or something would tell you to do things.
As someone who doesn't know anything about about what
mm,
interval training. Can you just give
mm.
us like a quick explanation of what that entails?
So interval, it contains a couple of things. So it sort of contains intervals, speed runs, and fartlek. So interval is
Fartlek?
run,
Sorry.
fartlek. Yeah, we'll get into fartlek. Fartlek is fun. It's a funny word.
It's a funny
Um,
word.
intervals is essentially running and walking. So like
Yep.
run for 2 minutes, walk for 3 minutes. So if anyone starts running with Couch to 5K, that's how you start, run, walk. And
Mm.
not only is that good because it gives you a break to catch your breath, it also slows your heart rate down, speeds it back up, slows it back down, starts it back up. So it
And the heart sort
increases
of going in and out of different zones is really important, right?
exactly. It's putting stress on your heart.
Yeah.
So it's essentially exercising your heart. There's then speed runs, which will be exactly what it sounds like. A very short run, but it's fast.
Mm.
And I hate them, and I stopped doing them because I wasn't enjoying it.
Hey, I
Um,
think that's completely valid. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
I mean, I assume that's one of those things where like if you don't want to do that, I'm sure there's other ways that get you in the same realm that you don't have to do it.
exactly. Right. And I'm not trying to be an Olympian, so
No.
I don't need to be quick. And then there's fartlek. So fartlek
Yeah.
comes from the Swedish word fartlek, which means to play with speed. So
Oh.
these were really, really fun, and I recommend doing this just for shits and gigs. You'll start running like, say, 2 minutes at easy pace. So you're
Yeah.
just chilling, and it'll be like, now run for 5 minutes at medium pace. Now run for 1 minute at a sprint. Now run for
Oh.
3 minutes at medium. So you're going all over the place. Once again, stressing out
Oh.
your
Yeah.
heart. But it also trains like I'm fast, I'm exhausted. Maybe in a marathon, you've run up a hill, you're
Yeah.
cooked. Now let's slow it down a little bit. We're still running, but we're trying to get our breath back and slow our heart rate down while we're still on the
So
move.
it in a way it also sort of trains you to monitor your speeds, which is what you were saying before
Yeah,
about like going, oh, I
exactly.
can still run, but I could do it at an easy pace because I need to give some sort of balance to that.
That's right. It's like really locking into that. Because what they call it perceived effort.
Yeah.
So rather than an easy pace, and they're big on this in Night Run Club, an easy pace isn't 7 minutes per kilometer. An easy pace is conversational. A medium pace is you can't have a conversation anymore, but you can't feel your heart if you put your hand on your chest. Hard effort is when you feel like your heart's going to explode through your chest, stuff like that. So um, yeah, so that's interval. So that was Wednesdays. Thursdays would be a complete rest day. It would be the only day of the week where I wouldn't even like go for a walk or whatever.
Mm.
And that's largely because that's my awful day where I have to go into Sydney, which is terrifying and scary.
That's
But
an
it's a
exercise in itself.
yeah, it is. It's a good excuse
Yeah.
to not do anything, and you don't need
Yeah.
an excuse. But for me, it
No.
goes, okay, um, today's the day off, and you do need at least one day where you don't do anything. And then Friday is another cross training day, so that would be boxing. But the fun part about this would the class that we do on Fridays is from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. I don't start
Mm.
work till 9, so you got 2 hours. And the boxing gym, as all good boxing gyms do, has a sauna and an ice bath.
Ah, very
And
important.
it's so important. I don't know why a sauna is important, but apparently it's good for you.
I've never been in a
Um,
sauna, I don't think, but I'd like to
oh,
do a sauna one day.
highly recommend it's good. It makes me feel nice.
Yeah.
Like I guess it stimulates dopamine in some kind of way. But ice bath I know is good because it like contracts your muscles, and
Yeah.
then when you start to warm up, I've just figured it out, contracts your muscles, and then you go into the sauna and it relaxes them again.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
it's like stretching, but it's like semi-automatic stretching. Your
Damn.
muscles are doing it for you because of temperature.
Yeah.
But ice baths, and we do rounds. So I do like 5 minutes in the ice bath, 10 minutes in the sauna, 3 minutes in the ice bath.
Oh,
And
okay.
mentally, it's insane. Like if you're on an ice bath, you have to just lock in. Like you
Yeah.
can't think about anything. You need to close down to the world because
It reminds
it's
me of
it's
I
awful.
bet I'm assuming you'll have watched this too, but it reminds me of the Mythbuster episode where they're like where they
Mm.
put their hand in the ice and they're like swearing
See how
to
long they can hold
see
it
how
in
long they
there
keep it
for.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it reminded me
So
of.
3 minutes in the ice bath is if it's cold, if it's sometimes it can be a little bit warmer, like 9 degrees if a lot of people have been in it. But if it's like at its temperature it's meant to be, 4 or 5 degrees, 3 minutes is like absolutely excruciating. And
Yeah.
as long as I can do, but it's fun, lock in, good for
For
the
sure.
muscles. And fun fact about ice bars, they release 3 minutes of an ice bath is meant to provide the same amount of dopamine as a bump of Coke, right? But Coke hits it all at once. You get
Oh,
spike immediately. With an ice bath, it takes 3 minutes,
to
3 hours, sorry, for
Oh,
that dopamine to slowly build
damn.
up. So you're having more and more dopamine being released over the course of 3 hours.
So by the
And
time you
then
start
it
working, it hits
stays,
you.
it stays for 6 hours
Oh my
afterwards.
God.
So you feel unbelievable if you have an
Wow.
ice bath. So
That's
good way
really
to start a
interesting.
Friday. And then finally, Saturday is long run. So
Yes.
that started as like 4 kilometers, and I didn't think I was even going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, it was 18 kilometers. And it just slowly built over the course of
Unimaginable amount
4
of
months.
length of a time for someone to
Yeah.
run. As someone who hasn't, but look, I will say this is something that I'm interested in. So what you've done
Mm.
is give me a whole heap of interesting things to think about.
And that's
Uh,
not even including the stretching.
yeah.
Got to stretch twice a day. Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything I had
Mm.
for this program. I just have to say thank you so much for jumping on the pod, John. I really appreciate it. I feel like this
Thank you
was.
for listening
I'm
to
sure.
me ramble about running for
I hope
90
someone
minutes.
who was listening to this goes, "Oh, maybe I could run." That's definitely
Yeah.
me. I think I'm gonna give running a go. I'm gonna
What's
give it a red
my
hot go.
good question, Josh. What is
Yeah.
my one piece of running advice for the people?
Well, yeah.
Thank you for
If
asking.
someone like you know what to me, right?
Yeah.
Literally last night I downloaded Nike Run Club.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Um,
good. That's good.
and I've got Couch to 5K. I'm gonna give it.
Do you want to
I'm
go
gonna
for a 500 meters when I'm down in Melbourne?
maybe
Yeah.
I'll see how I go. I'll do a few runs first before you do it.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see. I'm about to start. I have
Yep.
no experience other than this conversation you've just
Mhm,
given me.
mhm.
What is your one piece of advice?
Can I give 2?
Yeah, you know what? You can give 2. You can give 3 if you want.
Okay, I'll do 3. Number 1, don't run on consecutive days. You'll
That's
get
good.
shin
Okay.
splints. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what that is, but that doesn't sound good.
It's when your shin splinters open.
Oh,
So don't run on consecutive days.
don't give. Okay.
I'm only going to give 2.
Oh,
And
hey,
the
but rule of
second
threes.
one.
Please have us. I need you. You need to
Okay,
do a
I'll come
third.
with the third one. I'll come with the
Okay,
third one.
okay.
The third one is
No, do the second one first.
no.
You did 1, and then you were gonna do 2. And I asked you for the third one.
Okay, good point.
Then
I'll
do 2, and then do 3.
Good, thank you.
No worries.
Number 2. So number 1 piece of advice: don't run on consecutive days. Number 2 piece of advice is still do other things. Like
Mm.
running can get very monotonous, and it can be lonely, and it can be boring. So still do other sports.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
Cool.
be cross training per se, but still go for a run. Still play mixed netball on Monday nights.
Love
You
that.
can run and do other things, and it will benefit you. Number 3, this is a sticky note I actually keep in my shoe, and I've had it in my shoe since I was treadmilling back at Top Gym Fitness
Oh.
in East Brunswick.
Shout out
And
Top Gym.
it's a
Top Gym.
quote. I don't know where I heard it or who said it to me, but I wrote it on a sticky note and put it under the sole of my shoe, and it says, "We don't run to prove that we're runners. We run to celebrate that we're runners." And
Oh,
that completely changed my perception
that's
on running.
beautiful. That's honestly beautiful.
You don't run to, "Oh, I've run a half marathon. I'm a runner now." That's a celebration that you're a runner. So every time you go out there, you're celebrating that you're a runner by running, which is the thing that makes you a runner. So that's my advice. If you run, you run.
Have you watched Forrest Gump?
I haven't, no.
You should watch Forrest Gump.
My dad was giving me Forrest Gump quotes after the half marathon. He's like, "Time to go home now." I'm like, I don't know what that means.
I reckon you might like it. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm sure you might enjoy it.
I'll watch it next time on a 14-hour flight. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you
But no,
so
thank
much for
you.
coming.
I appreciate you listening to me talk about running. And
What can I
you know,
say?
hopefully it makes some people go, maybe I can do this.